Hey guys, tonight we're setting out beneath a sky that looks like crushed sapphire dusted with stars. The air is still cool, and the streets of Samarkand are only just beginning to wake. You stand there, half awake yourself, the faint scent of bread baking in the tandoor drifting through the alleys, while somewhere nearby a rooster insists it's already noon. You probably won't survive this journey. Not because it's particularly deadly, but because it's about 5,000 kilometers long, and honestly, you can barely survive your morning commute without coffee. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I always love seeing who's drifting off in which time zone. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink against the dawn as Samarkand stretches around you, all turquoise domes and golden brickwork that catch the first rays of the sun. The city hums quietly, as if still half asleep after a night of storytelling and tea. You stand near the caravanserai, where merchants are already shouting about prices that were unfair yesterday and somehow even worse today. Camels groan like they're filing workplace complaints, their eyes rolling at the thought of another several months of desert trudging. You've signed on as a merchant's assistant, or maybe just as an adventurer who got talked into something wildly impractical. Either way, this morning marks the start of a slow journey eastward along the Silk Road. You watch the sky shift from rose gold to pale blue as traders unfurl their goods for one last city sale before departure. Rolls of silk, fragrant spices, carved glass beads, and paper fans shimmer in the light. You breathe in cardamom, smoke, and horse sweat all at once. An oddly comforting mix that smells like history in motion. There's something timeless about this place. Samarkand has been a crossroads for centuries, a city where Persian poets meet Chinese astronomers and where traders from India, Arabia, and Byzantium all swap stories about the same road you're about to take. Historians still argue whether Samarkand truly was the crown jewel of the Silk Road, or if that's just the result of good PR and some 14th century marketing genius named Timur. Either way, it feels like the world's beating heart right now. A local fact you've picked up: the city's water flows from the Zarafshan River through a maze of ancient canals, carefully maintained for hundreds of years. It's said the engineers who designed them were so precise that the water still sings softly through stone gutters every dawn, like a lullaby for the city itself. And here's a stranger tidbit: merchants once sprinkled powdered lapis lazuli into ink to write letters home, because if you're going to risk your life crossing deserts, you might as well have glamorous stationery. Your employer, a plump merchant named Yusuf, hands you a cloth ledger and mutters about tariffs. He's dressed in cotton dyed indigo blue, his beard oiled neatly, his mood decidedly less polished. "Remember," he says, "silk goes east, glass goes west, and my patience goes nowhere." You nod, pretending confidence, though the sheer size of the caravan unsettles you. 30 camels, dozens of handlers, barrels of water, sacks of salt, and bundles of wool lashed tight with hemp rope. Each camel kneels reluctantly as its load is strapped down with rhythmic efficiency. The air thrums with sound, the squeak of leather, the jingle of bells tied to harnesses, and the deep rhythmic chanting of handlers coaxing calming to creatures that have no love for mornings. The moment feels big, bigger than you expected. You remember something you overheard in a tea house last night. On the Silk Road, you never cross just one desert. You cross 1,000 small ones, inside your head. At the time, it sounded poetic. Now, as the caravan starts forming ranks and Yusuf's assistant yells for order, it sounds alarmingly accurate. You trail after them through Samarkand's gate, where the city's sandstone walls rise like warm honey in the sun. Guards check documents, mostly just an excuse to chat and peek at the goods. A boy sells clay flasks of water. Someone nearby argues over the correct price for a length of dyed cloth, and an old man recites a prayer to ensure no camel goes lame before the next oasis. Once through the gate, the sound of the city fades almost immediately, replaced by open air and birdsong. The road ahead unfurls into the horizon like a pale ribbon across a sea of dust. This is the first stretch, flat, deceptively easy, and filled with false confidence. Yusuf rides a small horse, muttering constantly about profits. You walk beside a camel named Zahir, who looks like he's seen empires rise and fall and found them all equally unimpressive. You pat his neck. He doesn't acknowledge it, but you like to think he appreciates the moral support. The rhythm of walking settles in. Your sandals scrape sand. The caravan creaks and jingles forward. The morning sun warms your shoulders. Dust gathers in your mouth until it feels like you're chewing parchment. Someone starts humming, a simple tune that keeps the group in step. After an hour, the city has vanished behind a shimmering haze. Samarkand's domes are just a memory, and you're already surrounded by open desert. The silence out here is enormous, so big it almost hums. You find your thoughts slowing, your breath sinking with the steady plod of the animals. You imagine travelers from centuries ago walking this very same track. Persian traders in flowing robes, Chinese envoys carrying scrolls of jade seals, Roman glass merchants who could barely pronounce the word Samarkand but knew how to count silver. Some historians believe the Silk Road wasn't a single route at all, but a tangled web of trails that shifted like rivers, always moving, always reinventing itself. Others argue that it wasn't about trade so much as about ideas, that religion, art, and gossip were the true cargo. You kick a small stone off the path and smile at the thought that you're now part of that story, just another set of footprints in a 1,000-year parade. By midday, the heat has turned merciless. You can feel your skin crisping under the sun, and Yusuf insists everyone drink from the water barrels sparingly. "This is not a bathhouse," he says. You resist pointing out that you would actually pay for one right now. When you pause to rest, you nibble on dried apricots and hard bread that tastes suspiciously like sandstone. A few camels chew thoughtfully beside you, and you start to realize that their slow, steady pace is what will keep you sane. There's something hypnotic about the rhythm, the way their feet sink and lift, the soft snorts, the occasional flap of an ear against a fly. It's almost meditative, in a dusty, mildly smelly kind of way. As evening drapes over the desert, the light shifts again, painting everything in bronze. The caravan halts to make camp. Fires spark to life. Kettles whistle softly. You sip weak tea brewed from crushed herbs and wonder what lies ahead. Bukhara, Kashgar, the mountains, and finally China itself. Each name feels like a promise and a dare. You lie back on a blanket, staring at the stars. They're impossibly bright, like someone scattered a bag of diamonds across velvet. You can trace the Milky Way from horizon to horizon, realizing that the same sky has guided traders for millennia. Historians still argue whether ancient caravans navigated by stars or by instinct, though you suspect it's mostly the same thing. A breeze drifts through camp, warm and dry, carrying the faint sound of laughter from the far side. You close your eyes, letting the quiet seep into you. The road is just beginning, and already time feels slower, stretched out like silk pulled across the loom of the desert. Somewhere, a camel grumbles softly. You think it's saying good night, or maybe, here we go again. The sun isn't even up yet when the shouting begins. Someone, somewhere, is arguing over a missing saddle strap. Another curses at a particularly moody camel. And you, still half asleep, are trying to figure out if there's any chance you can call in sick to a 2nd century caravan. Spoiler, you can't. The air smells faintly of ashes from last night's fires. A pale light spills over the dunes as the camp stirs. The camels grunt and shift, folding and unfolding their long legs with the slow precision of bored bureaucrats. Today is all about loading the beasts, an ancient, delicate, and slightly chaotic art that determines whether your goods arrive intact or scattered across the desert like confetti. You rub the sleep from your eyes and stretch, feeling that particular stiffness that only comes from sleeping on packed sand. Yusuf, your merchant boss, is already inspecting the goods with an expression somewhere between suspicion and despair. "We leave at dawn," he mutters, though dawn technically started 15 minutes ago. You wander over to the cargo area. There are heaps of rolled silk in shades of deep crimson and pale jade, sealed jars of dates, brass trays, glassware wrapped in straw, and small chests of lapis lazuli, stones so blue they almost glow. Each load is weighed, balanced, and tied with rope that looks just one bad knot away from disaster. Camel handlers move with an easy rhythm born from experience. They hum low songs, half prayer, half instruction. Every now and then, a handler pats a camel's neck affectionately, then immediately swears at it when it tries to sit on his foot. You're quickly learning that camels are not ships of the desert, so much as slightly evil yachts. You're assigned to help a handler named Farid, a wiry man with sun-leathered skin and a smile that never quite leaves his face. "You, new one," he says, handing you a bundle of leather straps. "You'll help with Zahir." You glance at Zahir, the same unimpressed camel from yesterday, who snorts like he's just been told an unfunny joke. His eyes half close, and he makes a sound that's somewhere between a sigh and a complaint to management. Farid grins. He likes you, or at least he hasn't spat on you yet. You take that as a compliment. Together you begin loading. Every camel gets a specific weight limit, roughly 200 kilograms, evenly distributed across its two sides. Too much on one side, and the camel might collapse mid-journey, or worse, refuse to move at all, which can halt the entire caravan. Farid demonstrates, tossing a sack of dates onto one side, then adding a water jar to balance. He adjusts the ropes with a deft pull and ties them with knots that look impossibly complex. "Balance," he says, "is the secret. The camel knows before you do if something's wrong." You try your hand at it and promptly over-tighten one strap so much that Zahir lets out a long, offended groan. Farid chuckles. "Gentle, you're not strangling a tax collector." You laugh, a little embarrassed. There's something oddly meditative about the process. The rhythmic tug of ropes, the soft thuds of shifting loads, the occasional burst of laughter when a stubborn animal decides to sit down mid-packing. A historical fact floats into your mind: leather saddlebags from the early Silk Road era preserved in the Taklamakan Desert, still marked with merchants' insignias, tiny ink stamps declaring ownership. Some were even perfumed to mask the camel smell. It's comforting to know that vanity has always been part of commerce. Then Farid tells you something stranger. "Did you know," he says, "some caravans bring musicians, not for entertainment, for the camels. They say rhythm keeps them calm." You imagine a full band trudging through the dunes, playing gentle flute tunes for 30 irritable animals, and decide that might actually be the most poetic thing ever. Historians still argue whether these caravan songs had practical roots, helping synchronize walking, or spiritual ones, meant to ward off jinn lurking in the sandstorms. Either way, as Farid starts humming again, you notice Zahir's ears flick in what looks suspiciously like appreciation. As the sun climbs higher, the air thickens with heat and dust. You wipe sweat from your forehead and help tie the last bundle of wool. Around you, the other handlers are finishing their work, checking water skins, testing harnesses, ensuring that the silk bales are wrapped tight enough to keep sand from sneaking in. Yusuf strides through camp, inspecting everything. He pauses beside you, eyes the camel's load, and gives a curt nod. "Good," he says, then adds, "Don't lose any of it, or I'll sell you to the next monastery as a cook." You grin. "I can't even boil rice." "Then it'll be a short career," he replies, moving on. Soon, breakfast appears. Flatbread warm from a small fire, dried apricots, and salty cheese. You sit cross-legged beside the others, chewing quietly as the camels shift restlessly. There's no rush to finish. The desert demands patience. Every motion feels deliberate, even the pauses. A few paces away, someone's trying to coax a young camel named Rafi to stand. Rafi, however, has decided that today he identifies as a rug. After 5 minutes of persuasion, the camel suddenly springs to its feet with theatrical indignation, sending the handler stumbling backward. Everyone laughs. Even Yusuf cracks a smile, which you're convinced hasn't happened since the previous century. Finally, the caravan is ready. 30 camels in a long, slow line. Their loads secured, their shadows stretching thin in the morning light. Each wears a small bell around its neck, not for decoration, but so that in fog or storm, the handlers can follow the sound and keep formation. The gentle jingling becomes the heartbeat of the caravan. Farid climbs onto a small donkey that serves as his lookout perch. "Once we move," he warns, "no stopping for lost sandals. If you drop it, it belongs to the desert now." You glance down at your worn leather sandals and make a silent promise not to anger them. As the first camel lurches forward, the entire line shuffles into motion. The sound is mesmerizing. A low creak of ropes, the thump of padded feet, the steady chiming of bells. Dust rises in soft clouds, catching the sun like gold mist. You fall into rhythm beside Zahir, feeling oddly proud of the perfectly balanced load on his back. There's a calm satisfaction in knowing that the caravan will move smoothly today because of a job well done. The landscape rolls gently outward. Low dunes, clusters of scrub, the faint shimmer of heat ahead. It's beautiful in a minimalist, slightly threatening way, like a painting someone left half-finished. After a while, Farid calls out a story to keep everyone awake. He tells of a merchant long ago who tried to smuggle silkworms out of China hidden inside his walking stick. They say he succeeded, Farid says, and that's how silk reached the West. You can't tell if it's true, but it fits perfectly with the road's reputation for half-myths. Historians still argue whether that particular story is real or just clever propaganda from later traders. Either way, you picture some sneaky man whispering to his staff, "Just act normal," while hiding a tiny silk empire in his cane. By mid-morning, the heat presses down hard enough that the air itself seems to hum. The camels slow to conserve energy. Every few kilometers, the caravan halts for water and adjustments. Farid checks the ropes again, tightening a few knots and loosening others. You help him shift a jar that started to tilt. The camel grumbles but endures. He gives you a rare nod of approval. "You're learning." "From the best," you say. He grins. "No, from the camels. They're patient teachers." The desert stretches endlessly ahead, a pale ocean without waves. You find comfort in the repetition, the slow rhythm of steps, the sway of loads, the distant jingle of bells. The anxiety of departure fades into something quieter. You're part of a moving world now, a long, slow organism made of humans, animals, and cargo, all breathing, creaking, and sweating together across the sand. As the day wanes and the horizon blushes orange, the caravan halts again to make camp. You untie ropes with sore fingers, carefully unloading each item. The camels kneel gratefully, sighing like they've just clocked out after a long shift. You stretch your back and look west, the direction of Samarkand, already fading behind a veil of dusk. Tomorrow, the road will lead deeper into the wilderness. But for tonight, there's a fire, a tin cup of warm tea, and the slow, steady breathing of 30 sleeping camels. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the dunes, the Silk Road waits, ancient, endless, and humming softly under the stars. The morning begins with the smell of dust and boiled tea. You wake to the sound of jingling bells and the soft grunt of camels stretching like giant, disinterested cats. Someone pokes at the embers of last night's fire, stirring up tiny sparks that vanish into the pale dawn. Your eyes are gritty, your back aches, and your hair feels like it's been rolled in flour. But somehow, this already feels like routine. Today's the day you leave Samarkand behind for good. The city walls are still faintly visible in the west, a line of honey-colored stone catching the early light. Beyond them lies everything you know: noise, color, spices, laughter. Ahead of you lies nothing but road, wind, and the slow, endless horizon. You sip tea from a dented tin cup. It's bitter, but it warms your throat. Farid is already loading the last supplies onto the camels, humming one of his desert songs under his breath. Yusuf is arguing with a tax collector who has appeared like a mirage with a clipboard and a bad attitude. "Paperwork," Yusuf mutters, waving the parchment at you. "Even in the middle of nowhere, someone wants a fee." You glance around. The checkpoint consists of one bored guard, a spear, and a very determined goat chewing on someone's sandals. Bureaucracy, it seems, is eternal. By the time the sun clears the dunes, the caravan is ready. 30 camels, their loads carefully balanced, bells chiming softly in the wind. The handlers line up. Yusuf rides ahead, his turban wrapped tightly against the glare. You fall into step beside Zahir, who eyes you with that same eternal disdain that only camels can master. The moment you step through the city gates, the air changes. It's as if you've walked through an invisible curtain. Behind you, life, noise, markets, color. Ahead, silence, heat, and the faint rustle of wind. You glance back once more at Samarkand's domes. For a second, they glow turquoise and gold against the rising sun. Then, as the caravan moves forward, the mirage swallows them whole. The road unfurls like a pale ribbon across the steppe. It's not paved, not even marked, just a faint indentation carved by centuries of travelers. You follow it instinctively, like every caravan before you, trusting that if you keep walking east, the road will eventually reveal where it's going. The first few hours are easy. The air is cool, the sand still firm from night's chill. Birds swoop low, pecking at insects stirred by the caravan's movement. You fall into rhythm. The creak of leather, the soft hiss of sand underfoot, the occasional muttered curse from someone trooping over a stone. "Enjoy this part," Farid calls from ahead. "By noon, you'll be missing your shadow." He's not wrong. By midday, the heat starts to rise in shimmering waves. The horizon blurs. You can't tell where the earth ends and the sky begins. Sweat slicks your back. Your clothes cling. The air tastes like metal and dust. You wrap a scarf around your face, squinting against the glare. Even Zahir, usually stoic, slows his pace, his long lashes fluttering against the sun. You think about the countless travelers who must have seen this same horizon. Roman traders bringing glass, Indian monks carrying scrolls, Chinese envoys escorting silk. Some historians say that the Silk Road wasn't really about silk at all. It was about connection, about the invisible thread tying all these worlds together. Still, it's hard to feel philosophical when your tongue is sticking to the roof of your mouth like dried parchment. At last, Yusuf calls a halt. The caravan stops beside a cluster of scrub trees that barely qualify as shade. The camels kneel with relieved groans, their bellies settling into the sand. You sit, gulping tepid water from your flask. It tastes faintly of leather and dust, but it's still the best thing you've ever had. Fareed sits beside you, tearing a piece of flatbread in half. "You're holding up," he says. "Barely," you reply. "Does it ever get easier?" He smiles faintly. "No, you just get slower, which helps." You both laugh, the sound weak but genuine. Then he points eastward where the horizon trembles. "Out there," he says, "is the Kızılkum Desert, red sands. They say the wind there can strip paint off a temple door." You follow his gaze. The idea of crossing that endless expanse fills you with equal parts dread and awe. Still, there's something magnetic about it, the sheer scale of it, the quiet promise of nothingness. As the caravan moves again, you notice the first signs of the desert taking over. The green fades from the earth, replaced by ochre and red. The grass thins to wiry tufts. Even the wind feels different, dry, electric, ancient. Somewhere in the afternoon haze, you catch sight of another caravan traveling west. The two lines of travelers pass each other like ships on a silent sea. You exchange nods, brief and wordless. Their faces are weathered, their clothes coated in fine red dust. You wonder where they've come from, Chang'an maybe, or Dunhuang, and whether they're as relieved to be heading home as you are nervous to be leaving it. A young boy riding a donkey waves as he passes. You wave back, your arm heavy from the effort. He grins, and for a second, the road doesn't feel quite so endless. Later, when the sun dips low and the air finally cools, the caravan stops again. You make camp near a dry riverbed, where the sand is firm and cool to the touch. Fires spark to life, small and contained. Yusuf unrolls maps, marking the distance covered, barely 40 kilometers, though it feels like 400. You sit with Fareed and a few others, sharing tea and dried fruit. The conversation drifts lazily. Someone jokes that the camels are the real merchants here. They carry everything and complain the loudest. You chuckle too tired to add much. As night deepens, the stars bloom across the sky like spilled salt. You lie back on your blanket, staring upward. The Milky Way stretches from horizon to horizon, brighter than any city could ever be. It's strange to think that traders once used those same stars to find their way. Some historians argue they followed constellations like the Camel's Neck and Silk Road Star, though no one agrees which ones those actually were. The truth, maybe, is simpler. They just trusted the ones who'd walked before them. You roll onto your side and look at the dark silhouettes of the camels sleeping nearby. Even at rest, they look ancient, like statues carved by time itself. You wonder what they dream about. Probably nothing poetic, just water, shade, and maybe fewer humans. As you drift towards sleep, a warm wind brushes over the camp, carrying the faintest scent of cumin and sand. The desert hums quietly around you, a vast, slow heartbeat beneath the stars. Tomorrow, the road will lead deeper into the red sands. For now, though, the world is still, the firelight soft, and your body heavy with exhaustion. You close your eyes and think, for the first time, that you might actually make it to the end of this road. One dusty, aching, oddly beautiful step at a time. The morning greets you not with birdsong, but with wind, dry, restless, and already carrying that faint metallic scent of the Kazilthum desert. You blink against the brightness as the sun rises fast, like it's in a hurry to make everyone uncomfortable. The city is now long behind you, and ahead lies a reddish emptiness that stretches so far it feels like the world just forgot to end. The road, if you can still call it that, fades into nothing but wind-rippled dunes and scattered rocks. The sand here has a strange glow, deep gold underfoot, blushing crimson at sunrise. It's easy to see why travelers call this the Red Sands. You wrap your scarf tighter around your face, the air already biting at your lips. Farid squints into the distance. "The Kaiselkum," he says softly, as if naming an old spirit. "If the wind likes you, you'll cross it in peace. If it doesn't," he shrugs, "well, you'll still cross it, just slower." You nod, pretending that doesn't sound ominous. The caravan moves out, slow and deliberate. Every step kicks up dust that glitters faintly in the morning light. The camels sway in perfect rhythm, their bells chiming like lazy metronomes. You fall into step beside Zahir again, your reliable, if perpetually unimpressed, companion. His tail swishes occasionally, flicking away flies with an air of quiet authority. By mid-morning, the heat begins to close in like a curtain. You can feel it in your skull, pressing from all sides. The sand reflects sunlight upward, burning your eyes even through your scarf. Yusuf calls for a rest, and everyone collapses into the meager shade of a dune. Farid sits beside you, pouring a trickle of water into a metal cup. "Drink slow," he warns. "Your body is like a jar of salt. It leaks fast in the heat." You take a small sip and hand the cup back. The water tastes faintly of leather and smoke, but it might as well be honey. As the caravan settles for its brief pause, the handlers trade gossip. A group of them talk about a merchant caravan that vanished last year somewhere in this desert. "Sandstorm," one says, "swallowed them whole." Another shakes his head. "Bandits. Easier to blame the wind than admit people do worse things." Historians still argue whether banditry on the Silk Road was as rampant as old tales claim. Some say the deserts were mostly safe, the danger exaggerated to make merchants sound braver. Others insist whole stretches were ruled by nomadic raiders, invisible until they were already upon you. You glance out across the dunes, where heat ripples blur everything into motion, and think, maybe both can be true. You stand to stretch your legs. The horizon wavers like a mirage, shapes that might be dunes, or mountains, or memories. You think you see a glint of silver far away. Farid notices your gaze. "Mirage," he says. "The desert likes to tell stories. None of them end well." He's right. The shimmer disappears as soon as you blink. When the caravan starts moving again, the rhythm feels heavier. Each step sinks deeper into the sand. The camels grunt more, their patience thinning. The wind picks up, tugging at scarves, sweeping lines through the dunes. Every so often, a gust rises sharp enough to sting your face. Still, there's a strange beauty in it. The desert hums. Not a sound exactly, but a presence. You hear the faint rustle of grains moving across stone, the distant creak of wooden saddles, the muffled beat of hundreds of padded feet. It's like walking through the breathing of the earth. To distract yourself, you focus on details, the tiny spiral shells half buried in sand, remnants of when this place was once a sea, the faint white gleam of salt crust along dry riverbeds. Even out here, history whispers quietly. Farid tells you another story. Once, he says, an emperor tried to plant trees all through the desert to make it green. He brought in workers from far away. They planted 1,000 saplings. Within a year, the wind buried them all. The emperor gave up, but the locals say those trees still live underground, dreaming of rain. You laugh softly. That's ridiculous. He smiles. Of course, but so is walking to China with camels full of silk. Touché. Around midday, Yusuf orders another stop. The heat has become almost unbearable. The air wavers, your vision swims. You huddle with others beneath the sliver of shade cast by a tilted cart. A few camels kneel with legs tucked under them, eyes half closed, chewing their cud as if meditating. Someone pulls out a small flute and begins to play a slow, looping tune. The sound is thin, reedy, carried off by the wind, but somehow it eases the tension. The camels seem to calm. You can almost feel your heartbeat syncing with the melody. Ancient Chinese records mention music for the beasts, melodies played on flutes and gongs to soothe the animals on long journeys. Some archaeologists think this might be one of the earliest examples of animal behavioral science. Or maybe people were just desperate for anything to keep the camels from biting. As afternoon fades, the desert's light softens to gold. The sand looks almost gentle now, the wind slower, cooler. You've walked maybe 20 kilometers today, which feels laughably little until you remember that each kilometer here demands more effort than 10 on any other road. You crest a tall dune just as the sun dips toward the horizon. Below, a dry plain stretches wide, dotted with black stones and pale bones of long-dead shrubs. The caravan pauses to take in the view. It's haunting and magnificent. For a moment, no one speaks. Then Yusuf clears his throat. "Half a day more," he says. "There's an oasis ahead, small but enough to rest." That word, oasis, feels like a promise. Water, shade, life. You can almost taste it. But first, there's still the wind to deal with. As if summoned by your thoughts, a gust roars up out of nowhere. Sand whips through the air, stinging your skin, filling your ears with hiss and static. Someone shouts. Camels bellow and protest. The sky turns a strange burnt orange, the sun swallowed by dust. Farid grabs your arm. "Cover your face," he yells. You pull your scarf tight, ducking behind Zahir. The world becomes chaos, howling wind, flying grit, the sound of ropes snapping. The air feels alive, clawing at you. You can't see more than a few meters ahead. You cling to Zahir's harness, trusting the animal's instincts more than your own. He lowers his head and kneels, steady as a rock. You crouch beside him, eyes squeezed shut, waiting for the storm to pass. It feels like forever, but eventually the wind dies. The silence afterward is startling, thick, and absolute. You cough, spitting out sand, your hair full of dust. The sun peeks through again, red and hazy. Around you, the caravan slowly regroups. Nothing major is lost, just a few scattered bundles, a broken pot, someone's pride. Yusuf wipes his face, muttering, "If that's the worst this desert can do, we'll survive." Farid chuckles. "Don't say that too loud. The desert has a sense of humor." As night falls, you make camp near the base of a dune. The air cools quickly, and for the first time all day, it feels pleasant. Fires glow softly against the dark, and the stars come out, infinite and sharp. You sit with your cup of tea, the taste of grit still in your mouth, and stare into the distance where dunes ripple under moonlight. There's a quiet power to it, the way the desert demands humility, how it reminds you that the world doesn't care where you're going. It just asks that you keep walking. Historians still argue whether the ancient caravans followed fixed routes or improvised each time, guided only by instinct and the position of the stars. Maybe that's what travel really is, a long, active faith that somewhere beyond the red sands, another dawn waits. You finish your tea, pull your scarf around your shoulders, and lie back on the sand. The grains still hold a trace of warmth. The wind hums softly through the dunes, and the stars seem close enough to touch. Zahir lies down nearby, snorting once before settling. You smile into the dark. "Good night, old friend," you whisper. The desert answers with silence, a silence so deep it feels like peace. By the time the caravan reaches the oasis, the sun has already melted into the horizon, leaving the sky brushed with indigo and faint streaks of fire. You've been walking since dawn. Your legs feel like they belong to someone else, and your mouth is a cracked riverbed. Then, just when you begin to wonder if Farid invented this oasis to keep morale alive, the scent of water reaches you. Faint, sweet, unmistakable. It's astonishing how quickly life returns to the desert when water appears. What was dead sand moments ago now hums with possibility. The camels quicken their pace, their noses lifting toward the wind. Even the handlers who've barely spoken all day begin murmuring, voices tinged with excitement. The first sight is a cluster of palm silhouettes swaying gently against the fading light. Beneath them, a patch of shadow that looks like spilled ink. Then you see the shimmer, a small pool, barely the size of a courtyard fountain, but in this wasteland, it might as well be an ocean. The caravan erupts in quiet relief. No cheering, no shouting, just the sound of heavy sighs, of sandals quickening over sand. You can almost feel the gratitude in the air. Yusuf raises a hand. "Slowly," he warns, "no crowding the water, camels first." It's a rule as old as the Silk Road itself. The animals carry the trade, and trade carries everyone else. The handlers guide them forward one by one, letting each kneel to drink. You hear the soft gulps, the satisfied snorts, the sound of lips meeting water like prayer. Only when the beasts are done does it become your turn. You kneel beside the pool, cupping your hands. The water is shockingly cold, crisp and alive, flavored with a hint of minerals. You drink greedily, then splash some onto your face. It runs down your neck, leaving goosebumps in its wake. You hadn't realized how heavy thirst could feel until it left you. Farid sits down beside you with a grin. "You see," he says, "the desert isn't cruel. It just likes to make you earn every kindness." You laugh softly. "And we've earned this one." "Indeed," he says, stretching out on the sand. "Now we rest." By the time camp is set, the air has cooled into something almost tender. Fires bloom like little suns, their smoke spiraling upward in thin blue ribbons. Around them, the caravanners gather, men and women of every shade and tongue. Persian traders with intricate beards, Turkic camel drivers, a Chinese interpreter traveling home, even a few wandering monks who sell medicine made from roots and stones. It's one of the things historians love about the Silk Road, not just the movement of goods, but of ideas, stories, and faith. Sitting here, it's easy to see how civilizations learned from one another long before they shared borders. Someone passes you a bowl of lentil stew thickened with dates. It's earthy and sweet, made richer by the faint taste of smoke. Beside you, Farid shares dried figs with the monk, who in turn offers a pinch of green powder that smells like mint and medicine. "For digestion," he says in halting Persian, "drink with hot water." Trade happens in gestures as much as words. The night deepens. Someone begins plucking a lute, slow, hypnotic chords that float like incense. Another voice joins in, low and steady, singing in a language you don't understand. The melody loops endlessly, soothing as breath. Zahir sits a few feet away, chewing quietly, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. You feel strangely connected to him. Both of you creatures of burden, perhaps, each carrying more than you were meant to, but moving forward anyway. Farid leans toward you. You'll notice, he says, every oasis has its own rules. Here, the water belongs to whoever guards it, usually a local family or a clan. We pay them for safety, shade, and permission to camp. He gestures toward a tent at the far edge of the grove, where a few men in bright robes stand watching. Their garments are trimmed in blue and gold, surprisingly fine for desert dwellers. They keep this place alive, Farid says, and they keep the peace. Yusuf approaches them with a gift, a bolt of silk, gleaming even in the dim firelight. The leader accepts it with a nod. Negotiations are quiet, dignified. No one raises their voice. A few coins change hands, a few words of thanks are exchanged, and that's that. You realize that this, not the distant cities, is where the Silk Road truly happens, in these small exchanges between weary travelers and local hosts, in the trust that strangers can find in a wilderness. After dinner, the fires burn lower, and talk turns to stories. Caravans live on stories. They travel faster than goods, longer than names. One man, an older Turk with a missing tooth, tells of a phantom city buried somewhere in the dunes, filled with gold but cursed, where every night the bells of its towers ring beneath the sand. Another insists that a serpent the length of a caravan sleeps beneath the desert, waking only when thunder rolls. The monk smiles at these tales, then offers one of his own, about Xuanzang, the legendary Chinese pilgrim who once crossed this same desert to fetch sacred texts from India. He speaks softly, as though retelling a prayer. They say his caravan ran out of water. He prayed beneath the stars, and a breeze came, cool and sweet. He followed it, and found an oasis just like this. You glance at the water again, shimmering faintly under the moon. Maybe faith is its own kind of compass. Later, you walk away from the camp to breathe the quiet. The desert at night is unrecognizable, cool, silver, and infinite. The stars are so sharp they almost hurt to look at. You hear the low rustle of palm fronds, the soft drip of water, the occasional snort of a camel shifting in its sleep. You lie down in the sand near the pool. The grains are fine as flour. Above you, the Milky Way spills like dust from a merchant's hand. It's strange. The world feels so vast here, and yet so close. You can almost believe that if you whispered a question into the air, the dunes would whisper back an answer. You think of all the caravans that must have stopped here across centuries. Traders, monks, soldiers, wanderers, each leaving some trace, however small. Maybe a broken pot buried somewhere beneath your feet. Maybe a lost coin, a forgotten footprint. The desert keeps them all, perfectly preserved beneath its silence. You're part of that same long line now. A faint sound startles you, soft footsteps in the sand. It's Farid carrying 2 clay cups. Couldn't sleep? You smile. Neither could you. He sits beside you and hands you one of the cups. Inside is hot water steeped with the monk's green powder. The steam smells like mint and something ancient. It helps, he says. Soothes the stomach and the heart. You sip. It's bitter, but calming. The kind of drink that quiets thought rather than fuels it. Farid looks up at the stars. Do you know, he says, some say the Silk Road is alive. That every caravan, every traveler, is like blood moving through its veins. You glance at him. And what's the heart? He smiles faintly. The oases, the places where we stop, rest, remember we're human. You nod, feeling that truth settle in your chest. Much later, when the fires have died to embers and the last murmurs fade into sleep, the wind picks up. Not harsh, but soft, like a lullaby. It moves through the palms, across the water, over your blanket. You pull it tighter and close your eyes. The sounds of the camp blend together. Camel bells tinkling, water lapping, someone's gentle snore. You think of all that lies ahead. Mountains, strange tongues, foreign markets. But for tonight, none of it matters. The road will wait. The desert, for once, is kind. As you drift toward sleep, the last thing you hear is Fareed murmuring something, half in prayer, half in gratitude. You don't catch the words, but you understand the feeling. That fragile peace between two long days of wind and dust. Here, under the palms and the stars, you belong nowhere and everywhere, all at once. The oasis hums quietly beside you, a heartbeat in the vastness. The brief, merciful pause in a journey that never truly ends. Morning at the oasis begins with the sound of camels grumbling. You wake before sunrise, groggy but oddly peaceful. The air is cool, damp from the night's breeze. Around you, the camp stirs. Muffled voices, crackling fires, the rhythmic thud of water skins being filled. You can still smell the palm trees and the faint sweetness of wet sand. But that's about to change. Yusuf, always the early one, moves from tent to tent reminding everyone, "Last water for 2 days, fill everything." His tone isn't sharp, just heavy with the experience of someone who's seen what happens when travelers underestimate the desert. You pack slowly, tying your robe tighter against the morning chill. The oasis glows behind you like a green dream you're already forgetting. Ahead stretches the Kazilkum, red sand, a name that sounds poetic until you realize it's meant literally. By the time the sun lifts, you're moving. The last palms fade into dots behind you, replaced by dunes that roll endlessly toward the horizon. The sand truly is red, not the bright orange of postcards, but a deep, burnished rust that seems to shimmer from within. Underfoot, it crunches softly, dry as old parchment. The air grows heavy fast. The coolness of dawn vanishes as if stolen. You wrap your scarf higher around your face, squinting at the glare. Every sound, footsteps, bells, breathing, seems muffled, swallowed by the desert. Fareed falls into step beside you, silent at first. The only movement on the horizon is the line of camels, bobbing heads and long shadows moving in slow rhythm. "Remember," he says quietly, "no singing, no shouting. You waste breath, you lose water." You nod, saving even your words. As the hours stretch, the heat grows like a living thing. It presses on your shoulders, seeps into your bones. Your lips crack despite the scarf. The taste of dust coats your tongue. You start walking by habit alone, one slow step after another. The world has boiled down to 3 colors: red sand, blue sky, white sun. Around noon, Yusuf calls for a brief rest. The camels kneel, grateful, and the handlers collapse into their own shadows. Someone mutters that even the wind has gone to sleep. You sit, unwrapping a scrap of dried fruit from cloth. It's sticky and hard, but tastes faintly of apricot and sweetness, enough to keep you moving. "Drink," Fareed reminds everyone, "but small sips. The desert punishes greed." You lift your water skin and let a single mouthful touch your tongue before swallowing. It's warm, almost unpleasant, but it feels like salvation. The air around you ripples like glass. In the distance, you swear you can see water, shimmering, dancing, inviting. A mirage, of course. Historians still argue whether ancient caravans developed methods to navigate mirages by instinct or just learned through centuries of mistakes. Probably both. You stare anyway, hypnotized by the illusion. Zahir snorts loudly, unimpressed by the false lake. He trudges forward as if to say, "Nice try, nature." You pat his flank. "You're smarter than all of us," you mumble. Farid chuckles weakly. He's seen more deserts than you've had breakfasts. As the day drags on, the world becomes quieter. Even jokes fade. The caravan stretches into a silent procession, each traveler wrapped in their own heat and exhaustion. Once, a gust of wind stirs up the surface sand, and for a few terrifying minutes, you're walking blind. The air becomes a red blur. Grains sting your eyes, fill your nose, crunch in your teeth. You pull your scarf tight and follow the jingle of camel bells, the only sound keeping you from panic. When the wind settles, you find yourself covered in fine dust, as if the desert has painted you into itself. You look around. Everyone else is the same. Ghosts trudging across a world made of rust. At last, as the sun dips, Yusuf raises a hand. "Camp," he says, simply. You stop near a low ridge that offers a scrap of shelter. The camels sink gratefully to their knees. Fires are forbidden tonight, the wind's too unpredictable, so the meal is cold. Flatbread, dried meat, a few figs. The silence feels heavy but sacred. When night finally falls, the temperature plummets. The desert is cruel that way. It burns by day, freezes by night. You wrap yourself tight in a blanket, lying against the camel's warm flank for comfort. The stars explode overhead, so bright they seem alive. Farid breaks the quiet softly. "You know, they say this desert was once a sea." You glance at him. "A sea?" He nods. "Long ago, before men and camels, there were fish here, coral, waves." You look around at the endless dunes, trying to imagine waves crashing where sand now flows. That's hard to believe. Historians still argue whether it's true, he admits with a grin. But the locals say when the wind blows just right, you can hear the ocean whisper. You listen, and for a moment, you do hear something. Not water, not quite wind either, but a low, deep sigh that seems to move through the dunes. "Maybe it remembers," you say quietly. Farid nods, then adds, "Maybe it dreams." You both lie there in silence, letting the universe stretch around you. Somewhere, a camel groans. The stars feel close enough to touch. You think of every traveler who's ever crossed these sands. Roman soldiers, Persian poets, Chinese monks, all walking under this same sky. The thought is strangely comforting. After a while, sleep comes not like a fall, but like sinking slowly into warm sand. The second day in the red sands begins harder. Your body rebels against movement. Every muscle aches. The sun feels angrier, more personal. Still, the caravan moves, always eastward. By midday, someone spots a dark shape on the horizon. You squint, expecting another mirage. But as the minutes drag, the shape doesn't waver. It grows clearer, the low remains of a structure, a ruin. When you reach it, you see the crumbling walls of what once might have been a caravanserai, a desert inn. Its stone walls are half buried in dunes, doorways open to the wind. Inside, you find faded carvings, geometric patterns, half erased by time. Farid runs his fingers over one. "Old Sogdian work," he murmurs, "at least 1,000 years old." You look around. Do you think anyone ever comes here anymore? "Only ghosts and fools," he says, smiling. "And tonight, we're both." The caravan shelters inside the broken walls. It's not much, but it cuts the wind. You share water and bread, grateful for even the illusion of safety. Someone finds a small inscription near the entrance, too worn to read fully, But one word stands clear: safar, journey. You trace the letters, feeling a strange kinship with whoever carved them. They must have felt what you feel now: the exhaustion, the awe, the quiet longing for home. Later, when the stars return, you lie on your back inside the ruins. Through the broken roof, the constellations look sharper, framed by the old stone. You spot one shaped like a winding road, or maybe a string of pearls. Farid glances at it too. "The road of heaven," he says. Travelers say it mirrors the Silk Road below, a path of light for souls who never found their way home. You close your eyes, feeling the words sink into you. The desert, it seems, is full of ghosts, but they're gentle ones. You fall asleep to the sound of the wind sighing through ancient stone, and for the first time, you dream not of thirst or heat, but of waves rolling softly over a red sea that remembers everything it once was. Morning rises pale and cool, spilling across the broken stones of the ruin like milk over red dust. You wake stiff, covered in a fine layer of sand. The desert has an intimate way of saying good morning, by filling your ears, your boots, and, somehow, your dreams. Zahir gives you a side-eye that suggests you snored louder than the wind. You apologize with a pat on his neck. He forgives you with a loud, dramatic sigh. The air feels different today, lighter. The endless dunes are thinning, replaced by flatter, stonier ground. In the far distance, hazy shapes rise, dark blue against the morning light. Mountains. It feels impossible, almost unreal. After so many days of sand and sky, the thought of anything taller than a camel seems extravagant. But the mountains keep growing as the hours pass, their ridges cutting sharper into the horizon. The desert gives way to gravel and sparse shrubs, then to scattered rocks that crunch beneath your sandals. "Welcome to the Nuratau foothills," Farid says, tightening his head wrap. "You can smell life again." He's right. The air carries a faint green scent, grass maybe, or moss. It's subtle, but after days of dust, it's intoxicating. The caravan moves slower now. The path begins to rise, winding between boulders. You can hear the clatter of hooves on stone, the grunt of camels negotiating the incline. You too find yourself breathing harder. The wind here bites colder, but it feels good, clean, alive, unfiltered by sand. After a few hours, Yusuf calls for a stop near a stream that trickles through the rocks. The sound of water is music. The camels crowd around, snorting impatiently. You kneel to wash your hands, watching the dust swirl away in little brown eddies. Farid crouches beside you. "You know," he says, "some caravans avoid this route altogether. They go farther south, longer but flatter, safer." "Why didn't we?" you ask. He grins. "Because Yusuf likes a view." You glance toward the mountains rising higher ahead, jagged teeth cutting into the pale sky. "I hope he likes pain, too." Farid laughs. "Oh, he does, just never his own." The day stretches long. The sun plays hide-and-seek behind drifting clouds. You notice colors returning to the world, not just red and gold, but grays, greens, blues. Small flowers grow between stones, fragile purple things that tremble in the breeze. You pass a herd of wild goats balancing on impossible cliffs, watching the caravan with suspicion. "See those horns?" Farid says. "They use them for medicine in the East. Some say they grant strength and long life." You smirk. "Or maybe the goats just live long because nobody can reach them." He chuckles. "That too." As the caravan climbs higher, the landscape changes again. The air grows cooler, sharper. The wind whistles through narrow passes, carrying scents of pine and stone. You pull your scarf tighter, both for warmth and to muffle the constant crunch of gravel. At midday, clouds gather. Shadows crawl across the slopes, stretching like dark fingers. The temperature drops suddenly. You can see your breath. Yusuf halts the caravan near a small plateau. "We'll stop here," he says. "Storm's coming." You look up. The sky is bruised purple, churning. Thunder rumbles faintly from somewhere beyond the peaks. The handlers move fast, securing tents, tightening ropes, herding the camels close together. You help anchor the canvas with stones, your hands stiff from cold. Within minutes, the wind arrives, a furious rush that flattens your clothes and fills your ears with noise. The first raindrops follow, fat and cold, splattering against the sand. It's the first rain you've seen in weeks. Instead of dread, you feel exhilaration. The smell, earthy, electric, alive, is almost too much. Inside the tent, Fareed laughs as water patters on the roof. "A blessing," he says. "The desert gives nothing for free, but the mountains still remember mercy." You grin, wiping droplets from your face. Feels like the sky finally exhaled. Outside, lightning flashes, white veins across a dark belly of clouds. The camels groan nervously. Zahir shifts, his bells jingling like anxious chimes. But Yusuf's voice carries over the wind, calm, steady, practiced. He's weathered worse, and somehow that steadiness spreads. When the storm passes hours later, the world smells reborn. Everything glistens, stones, sand, even the camels' backs. Tiny streams cut through the slopes, glinting in the fading light. That night, the caravan gathers around a small fire, the first in days. The flames cast long shadows on the rocks. Steam rises from drying clothes. Someone produces a handful of pine nuts and tosses them into the fire to roast. Their scent, warm, oily, nutty, fills the air. Yusuf leans back, content. "You know," he says, "there are stories about these mountains. Some say they hide old bandit gold. Others say hermits live up there, speaking only to clouds." Fareed adds, "Historians still argue whether the old Sogdians built watchtowers here to protect the road. Some think they did, others say it's just myth. But if you look closely, you can still see shapes in the cliffs, like broken stairways." You squint into the distance. Indeed, the rock face bears faint lines, unnatural angles that could once have been walls. Time has blurred them into mystery. The monk who's been traveling quietly with you all this time finally speaks, his voice soft but clear. "The road forgets names, but not stones. Stones remember everything." You find yourself staring into the fire, thinking about that. How many feet have walked this path? How many stories? How many lives? Layered one atop another like sand. When everyone drifts to sleep, you remain awake a little longer. The night is cold but luminous. The stars hang lower here, framed by peaks that look black and sharp against the sky. A pale mist coils between them like smoke. You hear the drip of water from a nearby ledge, the distant cry of something wild and unseen. You wrap your blanket tighter and breathe deeply. For the first time in weeks, the air smells of pine instead of dust. The silence feels heavier, but kinder. The next morning dawns bright and crisp. The storm has washed the world clean. Even the camels look less miserable. The caravan moves again, the path now hugging the side of a ravine. Far below, a river cuts through stone like a silver thread. You pause to look down. It's dizzying, but beautiful. The sun glints off the water, and the air hums faintly with the sound of rushing. Fareed joins you. "See that river?" he says. "It flows toward Fergana. Traders follow it to reach the valleys. There, we'll find orchards and maybe people who don't think sand is a food group." The thought makes you smile. fruit sounds nice. Real beds, too, maybe. Now you're just teasing me. He grins. Dreaming keeps your feet light. You keep walking. The road winds higher, steeper. At one narrow pass, the caravan squeezes between cliffs barely wide enough for 2 camels. The wind whistles through like a flute. You trail your hand along the rock. It's cold, smooth, ancient. Farid murmurs, "They say spirits live in these passes, mountain guardians. Travelers leave small stones as offerings. You notice piles of pebbles here and there along the trail, tiny mounds balanced with care. You add one of your own, placing it gently among them. Can't hurt, you say. Farid nods. The road always remembers who respects it. By sunset, the caravan reaches a plateau overlooking the valley. Below lies the promise of green, faint but real. You can see clusters of trees, maybe even smoke from distant homes. After weeks of red and gold, the sight of color makes your chest ache. You sit on a rock as the camels settle, watching the last sunlight fade from the peaks. The world feels enormous and silent. Farid sits beside you, sharing the last of his tea. It's gone lukewarm, but it tastes like victory. We made it through the desert, you say quietly. He nods. Half the road behind us, the harder half, some would say. You look east, where the mountains continue like folded paper, hiding the lands beyond. Kashgar, Turpan, maybe even the great city of Chang'an if you follow long enough. Your legs ache, your skin burns, your lips are cracked. But for the first time, you realize you don't want the journey to end too soon. There's something about the road itself, its rhythm, its silence, its quiet lessons that feels like home now. The stars appear one by one, flickering over the dark peaks. Farid, you say softly, do you ever wonder why we keep moving? He smiles, eyes glinting in the firelight. Because the road doesn't end until you stop walking. You let that thought linger, warm as the tea between your hands, as the first night wind sighs through the high, dark valleys of the Silk Road. The dawn comes quietly in the mountains. It doesn't blaze over the horizon like it did in the desert. It seeps gently through mist and shadow, touching the rocks and waking the streams. You rise to the sound of dripping water and distant bells. The air tastes sharp and alive, tinged with pine and cold stone. When you step out of your tent, the valley below is wrapped in a pale fog. The caravan stirs slowly. The handlers move like ghosts, their figures half hidden in the haze. Zahir stretches, shaking his thick coat, and looks at you with a kind of long-suffering wisdom. Another day, you murmur. He blinks as if to say, you're the one who chose this path. The trail leads downward now, a relief after days of climbing. The mountain air grows warmer with each step, and soon you hear bird song, real birds. The sound is strange after so many days of wind and silence. Farid rides beside you, smiling at the trees that begin to appear. Scraggly at first, then thicker, greener. We've crossed the high pass, he says. The valley ahead is called the Valley of Voices. Locals believe the mountains there can speak. You laugh softly. Do they answer back? Only if you listen long enough. As the sun burns through the mist, the landscape unfolds. A long, sweeping valley carved between towering cliffs. Waterfalls spill from high ledges, scattering light like shards of glass. The path winds through groves of juniper and birch, their leaves whispering secrets. You realize how long it's been since you've seen real green. It almost hurts to look at it. Every sound seems amplified. The crunch of gravel, the hum of insects, the sighing of wind through branches. It's as if the valley is alive, humming softly to itself. By midday, the caravan stops near a wide meadow beside a stream. Yusuf calls for a break, and people scatter to wash, to stretch, to let the camels drink. You sit on a flat rock and watch the water curl around stones. Farid sits beside you, dipping his hands into the stream. This valley has old stories, he says. Some say it was a place of echoes, where ancient kings buried their voices so they'd never be forgotten. That's poetic, you say. A little eerie, though. He grins. Most poetry is. You tilt your head, listening. The valley does echo strangely. Every bird call seems to multiply, bouncing off cliffs, fading and returning. The sound of Yusuf shouting orders comes back softer, almost musical. When the caravan moves again, you feel as though the valley is watching. The cliffs on either side are streaked with color, red, orange, gray, and carved in places with marks too deliberate to be natural. Old symbols, worn almost smooth. Farid rides close, lowering his voice. "See those?" he says, pointing. "Old Sogdian script. Some say this was once a resting place for traders who worshipped the spirits of the mountains. They carved prayers into the rock, for safe passage, for wealth, for memory." You stare at the symbols, half hidden by moss and time. Do you know what they say? He shrugs. No one really knows anymore. Languages fade, like footsteps in sand. That thought lingers as the trail narrows. The cliffs rise higher, blocking out most of the sky. It feels like walking through the throat of something ancient. Every sound, every hoof, every sigh seems to belong more to the valley than to you. By afternoon, the fog returns, thicker this time. The air grows colder. The world shrinks to a soft, gray bubble around the caravan. Yusuf calls out to keep close. His voice comes back from the cliffs in strange, warped tones. Zahir snorts nervously. You pat his neck. "Easy, friend. It's just air and sound." But you don't quite believe it. The fog muffles everything. Even time feels uncertain. Moments stretch and fold like fabric. Then, faintly, you hear something else. A low, rhythmic sound. Not thunder, not wind. Almost like singing. You glance at Farid. "Do you hear that?" He frowns, listening. The sound swells, echoing through the mist. Distant voices, layered and slow, chanting in a language you can't place. The caravan halts. Yusuf raises a hand, his expression unreadable. The fog parts just enough to reveal shapes ahead. Tall, robed figures standing by the cliffside. They don't move. Your heartbeat quickens. Then one of them steps forward, lowering his hood. It's an old man with silver hair and eyes like wet stone. He raises a staff carved with spirals. "Travelers," he says, his voice echoing from the rocks. "You tread on the breath of the earth. Who leads you?" Yusuf bows from his saddle. "We follow the Silk Road. Our goal is Fergana, beyond the mountains." The old man studies him, then looks over the caravan. "You are safe here. Few come this way now. The road forgets, but the mountains remember." He gestures for you to follow. The handlers exchange glances, but obey. The figures lead the caravan along a narrow path until the fog breaks, revealing a hidden plateau dotted with small stone huts and terraces. Smoke rises from fires. Goats graze on thin grass. You realize you've stumbled upon a mountain monastery, isolated, ancient, and alive. The monks, for that's clearly what they are, guide you to a flat clearing. They bring bowls of warm broth that smells of herbs and wild onion. After days of dry rations, it tastes divine. The elder sits by the fire, studying you. You have crossed the desert and climbed the ridge, he says. Few endure both. The valley has tested you. You nod, unsure what to say. He continues, here the mountains speak, not with words, with echoes. What you bring into the valley, it returns to you. Fear becomes fear. Peace becomes peace. Farid leans forward. And what if someone brings silence? The old man smiles faintly. Then the mountain will teach them how to listen. That night, the monks offer you shelter in one of their huts. The walls are rough stone, the floor lined with straw. Through a small window, you can see the peaks shining under moonlight. The valley glows faintly with mist. It feels both vast and intimate, like sleeping inside a breath. You can't rest. The elder's words circle your thoughts. What you bring into the valley, it returns to you. You step outside, wrapping your cloak tight. The air is cold enough to sting. The monastery lies silent, except for the distant murmur of a waterfall. You walk toward it, drawn by sound. At the edge of the terrace, the valley yawns open below, filled with silver fog. You whisper something, just a single word. Home. The echo comes back softer, stretched, almost like a sigh. Home. You try another. Who am I? The echo returns, slower, as if thinking, who am I? It's eerie, but strangely comforting. You close your eyes and listen. The mountain hums around you. Wind through rock, water through stone. Echoes of things older than language. For a long moment, it feels as if the world is breathing with you. When you return to the huts, Farid is awake, sitting outside with a small cup of tea. You heard them, didn't you? He asks quietly. You nod. He smiles. The monks say the valley remembers everyone who ever passed through. The voices of the lost traders, the forgotten kings, even the beasts that carried them, all mixed in the wind.
Do you believe that?
He shrugs. I believe the road keeps its own kind of memory.
You sit beside him, sharing the silence. In the distance, faint echoes ripple, the voices of the valley singing to no one and everyone at once.
By morning, the fog has lifted. The monks stand at the edge of the trail, blessing each traveler as they pass. The elder gives you a small charm, a polished stone etched with a spiral. For remembrance, he says, the road will change you. Don't forget the sound of your own voice. You bow deeply. Thank you. As the caravan moves on, you look back one last time. The monastery is already dissolving into mist, like it was never there. But the sound, the faint melodic hum of the valley, follows you for miles, blending with the rhythm of hooves and bells. Farid glances at you. What did you whisper to the mountain? You think for a long moment. A question. Did it answer? You smile faintly. Not yet, but I think it heard me. The path begins to slope downward again, toward greener lands and the promise of cities. Behind you, the Valley of Voices fades into silence, or perhaps into listening. The morning air feels different now, softer, gentler, carrying the faint scent of grass and smoke. The harsh silence of the high mountains fades behind you, replaced by the rustle of open plains. The world stretches wide again. You ride down from the ridges into a sea of rolling steppe, where the horizon ripples like the surface of an enormous green ocean. The camels seem lighter, faster, almost relieved to be back on gentler ground. Zahir flicks his ears, happy to munch on tufts of grass along the trail. You smile at him. It's been days since he's had anything fresher than dry grain. The handlers laugh softly too. After weeks of stone and sand, the simple sight of grass feels almost holy. Farid rides beside you. wrapping his scarf tighter against the wind. "We've entered the steppe lands," he says. "Nomad country. We'll need to be respectful here. They have their own rules." You raise a brow. "Rules like what?" He grins. "Rules like don't touch another man's horse, don't refuse his tea, and definitely don't challenge him to a drinking game." You chuckle. "I'll do my best." The day stretches long and easy. The steppe wind is constant, cool and steady, whistling through the grass like the sea through reeds. Hawks circle overhead, and herds of sheep and horses dot the landscape. You begin to spot dark specks in the distance, clusters of round tents that glint like coins in the sun. By afternoon, the caravan slows as a small group of riders approaches from the north. Their horses move like shadows, fast and silent. You can tell immediately these are no wandering travelers. They ride with precision, formation, and the easy authority of people who belong to the land. The lead rider raises a hand. He wears a fur-lined coat and a hat of black felt, his bow slung across his shoulder. His face is calm but unreadable. Yusuf nudges his camel forward, offering a polite nod. "We come in peace," he calls. "Merchants from Samarkand, bound for the east." The rider studies the caravan, eyes sharp and assessing. Then, to your surprise, he smiles. "You're far from home," he says in accented Persian, "but guests are never unwelcome on this grass." He introduces himself as Borchu, leader of a local nomadic clan that grazes near the Tian Shan foothills. His men flank him, relaxed but alert. He gestures toward the horizon, where a line of smoke curls lazily upward. "Our camp is near. Come eat with us tonight. The road is long and the wind cold." Yusuf bows gratefully. "We would be honored." As the sun dips lower, the caravan follows the riders across the plains. The sky turns molten orange, then deep violet. The nomad camp comes into view, a circle of felt yurts anchored by ropes and wooden stakes, surrounded by tethered horses and grazing goats. Children run beside the caravan, laughing, their hair streaming like ribbons. You dismount, and Borchu greets you with both hands. The air smells of roasting meat and fresh milk. Inside the largest yurt, a fire crackles beneath an iron pot. A woman stirs it slowly, humming under her breath. Borchu gestures for everyone to sit. "Eat," he says simply. "The steppe feeds all who respect her." The food is simple but rich. Boiled lamb, flatbread, fermented mare's milk that makes your head spin a little. You're not sure if it's the drink or the warmth, but you feel lighter, looser. Farid leans close, whispering, "Careful, too much of that and you'll think you can wrestle a yak." You laugh quietly, though by your third cup, wrestling a yak doesn't sound that impossible. After the meal, Borchu settles beside the fire, watching the flames dance. He speaks in slow, thoughtful tones. "My father once traded with caravans like yours," he says. "He said the Silk Road isn't really a road at all. It's a river made of footsteps and stories. Everyone who walks it adds their current." You nod. He sounds like a wise man. Borchu smiles faintly. He was. He believed the wind carried voices, the same way your monks said the mountains do. When the wind changes, he said, it's because the past is whispering. The fire pops. The sound blends with the murmur of the wind outside. And for a moment, you think you can hear something. Faint singing, maybe laughter, carried across the plain. Historians still argue whether nomads, like Borchu's people, considered themselves traders or raiders. The truth, like most things, probably depends on the weather and the mood of the horses. But sitting here, surrounded by warmth and laughter, it's hard to imagine them as anything but gracious hosts. Later, Borchu's daughter brings out a stringed instrument, a morin khur, carved with a horse's head. She plays softly, the notes low and mournful, like the sound of wind itself. Farid leans over. "They believe the instrument's voice comes from a horse's soul," he whispers. "That's why it sings when you play it right." You listen as the melody winds through the tent, threading through smoke and silence. The song tells of travelers lost in the steppe, of stars that guide them home. You don't understand the words, but you understand everything it means. When the music fades, Borchu offers you a bed of woven blankets near the fire. The yurt creaks softly in the wind, like a giant breathing. The air smells of smoke, wool, and milk. You drift toward sleep, the sound of horses outside blending with the echo of the morin khur. In your dream, the steppe stretches forever, waves of grass shimmering beneath a sky too wide to fill. You walk through it barefoot, your footprints vanishing as soon as they form. Somewhere ahead, voices sing in the wind. You can't tell if they belong to the living or the lost. You wake just before dawn to the soft jingle of bells. Outside, the camp stirs. Borchu's people move with quiet purpose, saddling horses, tending fires, laughing softly. You step out and see the horizon blushing pink with sunrise. It's breathtaking. Borchu joins you, handing you a steaming bowl of tea. "The wind will shift today," he says. "A storm from the north. You'll want to reach the foothills before it breaks." You sip the tea. "We're grateful for your hospitality. You've given us more than a meal." He waves a hand. "You'll give it back someday. The steppe always balances its debts." As you prepare to leave, he presents you with a small token, a braided strip of horsehair tied with red thread. "Tie it to your saddle," he says. "It will remind the wind whose friend you are." You thank him sincerely, securing it beside Zahir's reins. The caravan rolls on, the camp shrinking behind you until it's just a speck on the endless plain. Farid looks back wistfully. "Do you think they'll remember us?" You smile. "Maybe not by name, but the wind will." The road ahead glitters faintly with morning dew. Hawks cry overhead. The grass sways in long, slow waves. You can almost hear the echoes of Borchu's daughter's song, a wordless promise that even across oceans of land, no traveler is ever truly alone. By midday, dark clouds gather on the horizon. The wind stiffens and dust begins to rise. You pull your cloak tighter, glancing at the sky. Farid mutters, "Looks like Borchu's storm wasn't a metaphor after all." You grin. "Well, it wouldn't be the Silk Road without a little chaos." As thunder grumbles across the steppe, you think again of what Borchu said. The road is a river of stories. And somewhere in its current, your own story has begun to flow too, winding eastward with every step. The first raindrops fall, cool against your cheeks. The camels grunt, the handlers shout, and ahead, the horizon shimmers with distant mountains once more. Mountains that promise another border, another city, another mystery waiting in the fog. You urge Zahir forward, and together you ride into the rain. The rain falls steadily as the caravan pushes on, each drop cool against your skin and soaking into your robes. The steppe, though green and forgiving, has its own challenges. The soft grass now lies slick beneath the camel's hooves, making every step precarious. You tighten your scarf and keep your eyes on the horizon where distant mountains loom, their peaks veiled in mist and shadow. Zahir splashes through puddles, amused by the novelty, though he shakes himself periodically, sending a spray of water in every direction. You can't help laughing, remembering how thirsty he had been just days ago in the red sands. Water, it seems, has its own way of teaching humility. The caravan slows, everyone alert to the uneven terrain. Yusuf walks beside the lead camel, staff in hand, occasionally pointing out hidden rivulets that could turn into impassable mud. "Keep your eyes open," he warns. "Even soft ground can swallow you if you're careless." Farid rides beside you, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. "You probably won't survive if you ignore him," he mutters with a grin, the faintest echo of desert sarcasm still lingering in his tone. "And neither will your ego." You grin despite yourself. The wind whistles through the open plains, carrying the faint scent of wet grass and soil. The sky is heavy with gray, clouds streaked with silver. Rain taps lightly against your hands as you adjust your grip on the camel's reins. Everything feels sharper, more immediate. The road, after weeks of sand and mountains, demands attention. Hours pass, and the caravan finds temporary respite near a shallow depression where the rain has pooled. The camels kneel gratefully, snorting, flinging water from their muzzles. You take a seat on a rock, letting your wet cloak cling to you as you watch the water ripple in concentric circles. Farid leans beside you, cupping water in his hands. "Do you know," he says, "some traders believed these flats were haunted, that ghosts of lost caravans appear as rain or mist, trying to lead travelers astray." You laugh softly, shivering. "And you believe that?" "Historians still argue whether such stories were warnings or just superstition," he says with a wink. "Personally, I prefer to think they're both. Keeps you attentive." A sudden wind gust sends the rain sideways, soaking everyone anew. You duck your head under your hood, eyes squinting through the sheets of water. The flats stretch endlessly, a mixture of green and gray, punctuated by occasional thorny shrubs. Every step of the camels kicks up a spray of water and mud. Your boots, once dry, are now coated in slick, glistening clay. By midday, the rain eases, and the clouds break slightly, revealing patches of pale blue sky. The sun, shy and diffused, glints off wet leaves and puddles, making the landscape sparkle as if scattered with tiny gems. You pause to drink from your water skin, grateful for the cool relief, and notice the distant glimmer of a salt flat ahead, white against the darkening terrain. "Almost there," Farid murmurs. "The flats stretch beyond this point. Some say they're cursed, others say they're sacred. You'll see." You glance at him skeptically. "Sacred or cursed, I hope they don't swallow my boots." He chuckles. "You probably won't survive the flats if you let your thoughts wander." The caravan pushes forward. The flats are blinding in their whiteness, the surface hard but uneven. Each step is a careful negotiation. A misstep could twist an ankle or send a camel slipping. The air shimmers with heat, even under the muted sun, and the wet earth beneath begins to dry and crack as the day warms. Zahir plods steadily, ears flicking nervously at the occasional cry of a distant bird. You pat his flank, reminding him and yourself that steady endurance is better than speed. As the afternoon progresses, the flats give way to rolling sand again, though softer than before, and the wind rises to whisper through the desert like the faintest echo of forgotten caravans. The smell of salt and dust mingles in the air, a peculiar scent that reminds you of dried riverbeds and distant oceans. Farid points to a cluster of stones partially buried in the sand. "Markers," he says. "Traders placed them centuries ago to guide travelers. Some claim they align with stars, others with the sun. Historians still argue whether the placement was practical or symbolic." You run a finger along one of the stones, smooth and warm from the sun. "Feels like someone was here long before us." "More than long," Farid says softly. "Countless travelers, merchants, pilgrims, each left a trace, however small. That's the magic of the road." The sun begins to dip behind distant dunes, casting long shadows across the flats. The horizon blurs into a gradient of gold and gray. Your legs ache, your cloak is soaked and stiff, and your throat is parched despite the water you've sipped throughout the day. Yet the scene feels impossibly beautiful, the kind of quiet majesty that slows your pulse just by existing. By evening, the caravan reaches a low ridge that offers shelter from the wind. The camels kneel, exhausted but obedient. Fires are lit cautiously on the ridge, the smoke curling in thin, silver lines into the cooling air. The handlers prepare simple meals: flatbread, dried meat, a little cheese, enough to fill stomachs without slowing progress. You sit beside Farid, sipping weak tea from a clay cup, watching the sky darken. The salt flats stretch below, ghostly under the first glimmers of starlight. A faint breeze lifts the smell of wet earth and dry sand, mixing into something almost intoxicating. "Do you ever think about the people who walked this road before us?" you ask quietly. Farid nods. "All the time. The desert keeps their secrets, but it doesn't forget them. You walk, you breathe, and somehow you carry them with you." A small, unexpected sound, the jingle of a camel bell, draws your gaze to Zahir, who shifts lazily, blinking at the firelight. You pat him, feeling a strange kinship with him and the other creatures that share this endless path. Historians still argue whether certain flat expanses were intentionally left empty as trade deterrents or merely natural features that became infamous. You decide it doesn't matter. Walking through it, you understand the point. Endurance matters, more than certainty. As night settles, the sky glows with countless stars reflected faintly on the dry flats. The wind calms, and a gentle hush blankets the caravan. You lie back on a soft mound of sand, exhausted, letting your mind wander with the echoes of the day. The rain, the flats, the distant voices carried by the wind. Somewhere far off, a faint cry of a desert fox reaches your ears. You close your eyes, listening, feeling connected to every traveler who has walked these flats before, to the merchants, the nomads, the monks, and even the camels who have borne them. The flats hold memory in their silence, and you sense it folding gently around you, a quiet companion as sleep begins to take hold. The sun rises lazily over the distant dunes, painting the flats in pale gold that gradually warms into a soft, honeyed glow. You stretch stiff limbs, feeling the long night's rest in every joint. The camels stir, rousing themselves with groans and the occasional snort. Even Zahir seems reluctant to begin the day, shaking his head and flicking his ears at the wind that carries a hint of something new, something green, almost impossible after so many miles of sand and stone. "Another day," you mutter, pulling your scarf tighter and nudging Zahir forward. Farid rides alongside you, a grin hidden beneath his hat's shadow. "You probably won't survive this one either, unless you pace yourself," he teases, but the view makes it worthwhile. Ahead, the horizon shifts. The pale gold of the flats gives way to deeper greens, suggesting water, vegetation, life. The air is cooler, heavier with the scent of wet earth, and then, faintly at first, the glimmer of water appears, an oasis. Not large, not spectacular, but enough to make your heart beat faster and your spirits lift. The caravan slows, anticipation stretching each moment. Camels pick up the scent and begin nudging toward the source. You dismount, feet sinking slightly into damp sand, feeling the strange softness after weeks of hard ground. The air smells sweet, dates, palm fronds, and a hint of minerals from the water. "Look at that," Farid whispers, pointing. the oasis of the forgotten. Few travelers stumble across it these days. The oasis is small but lush. A crescent of palm trees arcs over a pool of clear water, reflecting the morning sun like a mirror. Birds flit between branches, chattering softly, and insects buzz quietly over the surface of the pond. The ground is rich, scattered with wildflowers that sway in the gentle breeze. You can almost feel the history in the soil, the countless travelers who must have paused here, leaving traces in the sand, the water, and the air itself. Yusuf leads the caravan into the shade of the palms. The camels kneel gratefully, bellies low, drinking deeply from the pond. You follow suit, cupping water in your hands and letting it slide over your face and lips. It tastes fresh, almost electric, like the memory of rain stored in the earth. Farid crouches beside you, cupping a handful. Legends say this oasis appeared centuries ago, when a wandering Sogdian trader struck a deal with the desert, he says. Historians still argue whether it's a natural spring or a mirage that sometimes becomes real. Either way, it saves lives. You let the water trickle down your throat, feeling it refill something deeper than mere thirst. You close your eyes, listening to the soft rustle of palms, the distant jingle of Zahir's bell, and the faint hiss of the wind over sand. For a moment, it feels like the oasis exists outside time, a secret pause carved into the relentless rhythm of the Silk Road. Around the pond, you notice carved stones, barely visible beneath roots and sand. Old markings, some geometric patterns, others half-erased script. Farid leans closer, tracing the faint lines. "These were left by travelers long ago," he whispers. "Prayers, names, maybe just boredom. We'll never know exactly. The desert keeps some secrets." You nod, brushing sand from your hands. Even in its beauty, the oasis feels fragile, a tiny reprieve in a vast, unforgiving landscape. You glance at the camels, now drinking lazily, and the handlers sharing quiet jokes in the shade. There's laughter here, but soft, almost reverent, as if aware that this sanctuary is not to be taken for granted. After a short rest, the caravan prepares to leave. The oasis, small as it is, seems reluctant to release you. You walk around the pool one last time, touching the fronds, tasting the water, inhaling the sweet, damp air. Somewhere, a bird song echoes, faint and melodic, like a whisper from the past. You glance at Farid. Do you think anyone remembers all the travelers who stopped here? He smiles softly. The water remembers them. The palms remember. Maybe the stones do too. And the road remembers everything. That's why we keep moving, carrying their stories forward. The camels stand, shaking off water, and the handlers gather belongings. Yusuf gives a brief nod. Time to move. You mount Zahir, feeling the weight of the journey ahead. The oasis shrinks behind you, but its memory lingers, a quiet pulse under your skin, like a heartbeat carried in the wind. As the caravan moves onward, the flats stretch once more, but now the journey feels different. There's a rhythm to the land, a steady cadence of hoofbeats, wind, and soft conversation. You notice the details more, the flicker of sunlight on stones, the curve of a distant dune, the subtle scent of sage carried in the air. Around midday, the desert begins to rise again, small dunes replacing the gentle flats. You pass a lone structure, a half-buried ruin, stones worn smooth by wind and sand. Farid points. Some say it was a small trading post. Others claim it was a shrine to travelers. Historians still argue. You touch the rough stones as you ride past, imagining the countless feet, hooves, and hands that must have touched them before. Somewhere in the rhythm of the caravan, you realize the Silk Road is not just a physical path, It's an archive of human movement, memory, and hope, folded into every grain of sand, every drop of water, every sigh of wind. By late afternoon, the sky turns coppery, the sun low but not yet setting. You pause on a ridge, looking back toward the oasis, a glimmer of green and water against the endless beige of the desert. It feels like a small miracle, a quiet reminder of the life that exists even in the harshest places. The camels rest again, and you unstrap your bag to stretch your legs. Fareed walks over, handing you a small piece of flatbread. "Eat," he says. "Tomorrow, the flats will be long and merciless." You nod, biting into it slowly, savoring the simplicity. The flavor is plain but grounding. You let your thoughts drift, thinking of travelers long gone, of traders who must have paused here centuries ago, of the monks and nomads you've met along the way. The sun dips lower, shadows stretching long across the dunes. The wind picks up slightly, carrying a hint of dust from the east. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the familiar tug of anticipation and fatigue. The road ahead is uncertain, but for now, the oasis of the forgotten has left its imprint, a quiet pulse of life, a whisper that the desert can nurture as well as challenge. Night falls gently. The stars appear slowly, shimmering like scattered salt on dark velvet. The camels kneel, content, their bells tinkling softly. You sit quietly, listening to the desert around you, the sigh of the wind, the rustle of dry leaves, the faint murmurs of the handlers preparing for the night. The oasis, though left behind, seems to echo in your memory, a secret anchor, a soft reminder of why you endure this road. Somewhere in the distance, the desert holds its breath, waiting for tomorrow's march, and you feel the quiet promise of survival, discovery, and the endless journey ahead. The morning is fragile, pale sunlight spilling like liquid gold over the shifting sands. You rise stiff, limbs still aching from the day before, the oasis already shrinking in memory behind you. Zahir shifts beside you, nuzzling the reins as if to remind you both that the journey continues and that comfort is only momentary. You breathe deeply, tasting the dry desert air, and feel it sharpen every sense: smell, sight, touch. Fareed rides alongside you, shading his eyes against the sun. "Today," he murmurs, "the flats play tricks. Keep your wits. The desert likes to test travelers, even ones who think they've seen everything." You frown. Tricks? Like what? Sand that suddenly turns into water? Or water that isn't water at all, he says, his lips curling into a faint smile. Mirages. Legends say some travelers spent days chasing illusions, thinking they were cities, rivers, or oasis after oasis. Historians still argue whether these were accidents of the eye or warnings from the desert itself. The flats stretch endlessly, undulating with heat and dust, a muted sea of gold and copper. The horizon flickers as the sun warms the sand, creating the illusion of distant lakes, palm trees, and shadowy settlements. You squint, trying to discern reality from illusion, and realize your mind, exhausted by days of walking and climbing, is eager to see life where there may be none. Zahir plods steadily, unconcerned by optical illusions, as he always does. You pat his neck, grateful for the constancy of him, and feel a fleeting pang of gratitude for companions who require no encouragement beyond food and gentle direction. The caravan moves as one, each member attuned to subtle cues: the slope of a dune, the color of sand, the angle of the wind. Yusuf occasionally calls out, warning of soft patches where camels might sink, or sharp rocks just beneath the surface. The rhythm of hoofbeats, staff taps, and bell jingles fills the air like a meditation. By midday, you notice something unusual, a distant shimmer that looks remarkably like a lake. The mirage is perfect. Palm trees, blue water, birds skimming the surface. For a moment, hope flares. The camels lift their heads, ears pricked, sensing the promise of water. Farid nudges you quietly. "It isn't real," he says, tone calm. "See how the shimmer moves with the wind? Don't chase it. Don't get distracted. The desert is patient but unforgiving." You nod, forcing yourself to look past the illusion and suddenly feel a kind of dizzy vertigo. How many times have travelers been fooled by the desert's tricks? How many lives altered, slowed, or ended because the mind succumbed to a vision? You shiver slightly, part anticipation, part fear, part awe. The caravan advances carefully, and the mirage fades, leaving nothing but sand, dust, and heat. You realize, almost uncomfortably, that the desert is both present and absent, tangible and elusive. It is memory as much as geography, a force that remembers all who pass, whether they succeed or fail. Farid leans close as the camels navigate a small rise. "Do you know," he murmurs, "some traders claim to see figures on the horizon. Old merchants, soldiers, even animals long dead, walking alongside their caravans in the heat. You could see them clearly, but when you reached the spot, nothing. Some think the desert preserves memory, projecting it in heat and light. Others say it's just exhaustion and sunstroke." You stare at the wavering horizon, considering. You remember the monks in the Valley of Voices, the children at Borchu's camp, the oasis of the forgotten, moments that have felt unreal even when fully lived. Perhaps the desert, the steppe, the mountains, all of it, has a way of folding time into space, making memory as real as the sand beneath your boots. The camels pause briefly at a cluster of dark rocks, partially buried by sand. Yusuf points out faint carvings, half erased by wind, geometric shapes, faint symbols, perhaps letters from traders long gone. They marked their route, he explains, or maybe their prayers. Historians still argue whether they were directional signs, blessings, or just boredom written in stone. You crouch to trace one with a finger, the rough surface warm from the sun. It feels like contact with someone from another time, a reminder that every step forward is built upon countless journeys before. Somewhere in the cracks of the stone, in the faded etchings, you can almost hear the voices of travelers who never finished their route. Voices carried in the desert wind, whispering advice, caution, or memory. By late afternoon, the flats begin to thin, and dunes grow taller, steeper, more menacing. The sun tilts lower, and shadows stretch long across the sand, creating illusions of cliffs and valleys where none exist. You feel the hypnotic pull of the landscape, the way it stretches perception, bending reality just enough to make a traveler question every step. Zahir trudges on, faithful and steady. You pat his flank, thinking of the companions and strangers who have walked this road. Monks, nomads, camels, merchants, all caught between memory and mirage. The desert, you realize, is less a place than a storyteller, weaving past and present, reality and illusion into every grain of sand. Farid rides closer, voice calm against the rising wind. "Pay attention to rhythm," he says. "Step, step, pause, hoof, hoof, shift. The desert obeys the patient. It punishes the distracted." You focus on the rhythm of the caravan, the beat of Zahir's hooves, the swish of sand. You begin to feel almost suspended in time, moving in sync with the earth itself. The mirage ahead flickers one last time, a pale lake with waving palms, and then vanishes, leaving only sun, sand, and wind. Even as the illusions fade, you feel their presence, a faint hum under your skin, a whisper of things past and things imagined. It is exhausting, mesmerizing, humbling. By evening, the caravan reaches a small rise with a clear view of a distant settlement. Mud brick walls, smoke curling from chimneys, the faint promise of food, water, and rest. You feel a thrill of relief, but also a strange reluctance. The desert's lesson lingers. It has shown patience, memory, and the subtle art of perception. As you set camp on the ridge, the sun bleeding gold into the horizon, the flats stretch behind you, vast and merciless, yet holding echoes of all who have traveled before. The camels kneel, dust clinging to their legs, their bells chiming softly in the fading light. Farid lowers himself beside you. "The desert leaves its mark," he says quietly, "not just on your skin or clothes, on your mind, on your soul. You'll carry today with you for the rest of the journey." You breathe in the wind, tasting sand and memory, sun and shadow. The mirages, the carvings, the whispers of lost travelers, they fold together into a single truth. The road is never empty, and no journey is ever truly alone. Night falls, cool and quiet. Stars prickle the sky above, each one reflected faintly on the flats behind you. The camels rest, the handlers murmur softly, and you lie back on the sand, letting the rhythm of the desert, the mirages, and memory carry you toward sleep. Twilight descends slowly, draping the land in muted purple and soft orange. The day's heat fades, leaving the desert and steppe with a gentle chill. You rise from the small dune where you've rested, brushing sand from your cloak, and adjust Zahir's reins. The camels stretch, shifting their weight and snorting softly, the evening air carrying their breath in faint clouds. Farid rides up beside you, a silhouette against the fading light. "The twilight hours," he murmurs, "are when the road changes its shape. Shadows grow long, but the path often becomes easier to read if you pay attention." You squint at the horizon. The dunes appear taller now, sharper, and every stone and shrub is outlined in a strange clarity. Colors deepen, the golds becoming copper, the silvers of the sand shimmering faintly under the rising moonlight. You realize the desert has a rhythm, a pulse, and it beats strongest in this quiet in-between. The caravan moves steadily, each member aware of the subtle cues around them. Hooves clop against dry sand, camel bells jingle softly, and the handlers murmur directions. Yusuf leads carefully, scanning the ground, pointing out dips and loose sand that could make a misstep costly. The rhythm is hypnotic, almost meditative. You fall into it, one step, one hoof, one breath at a time. The sky darkens further, and stars prick through the purple veil, scattered like sparks across a black velvet. You glance up, taking in constellations you recognize from other nights, familiar companions, steady and unchanging. The wind cools, bringing with it the scent of distant water and sparse vegetation. You realize that after weeks of sand, stone, and high mountain air, this scent feels luxurious, almost intoxicating. By the time the caravan reaches a narrow pass flanked by jagged rocks, the first hints of a city's lights shimmer in the distance. Small flickers of yellow and orange, gentle against the deep blue of night. The pass narrows, but the path is firm, and the camels navigate it without difficulty. You feel a surge of relief at seeing signs of civilization, though the desert behind you still whispers its silent warnings. Farid leans closer as you ride through the pass. "The twilight hours are also when the mind plays tricks," he says quietly. You might think you see people in the rocks or shadows moving in impossible ways. Don't be afraid. You probably won't survive if you let imagination overtake caution, but you will survive if you stay present. You glance at him and chuckle softly. His dry humor is comforting, even as it reminds you that vigilance is necessary. The shadows do seem to shift oddly. Rocks that appear solid a moment ago seem to melt into the landscape, only to reform as you pass. You remind yourself that the desert and mountains have their own way of stretching perception, a test of focus and patience. As the caravan emerges from the pass, you enter a low plain dotted with scrub and small trees. The city grows brighter ahead, its lights reflected faintly in a shallow, winding river. You can see people moving along the banks, carts being pulled, and the faint smoke of fires rising toward the stars. Civilization feels like a soft landing after the desert's relentless challenges, a promise of warmth and rest. The handlers begin to relax, letting the camels slow their pace. You dismount, stretching your legs and taking in the view. The city hums faintly, a gentle sound that blends with the rhythm of the camels and the whisper of the wind through scrub and small trees. It feels like a new chapter of the journey, one that balances the harsh lessons of sand, stone, and mirages with the comfort of human presence. Fareed walks alongside you, eyes bright despite the chill. The city is just a waypoint, he says softly. Don't get too attached. Remember the flats, the oasis, the mountains. Remember the mirages. Every place leaves its mark. You nod, thinking of the Valley of Voices, the Step Camp, and the oasis, each holding memory, challenge, and fleeting beauty. The city may offer comfort, but the journey itself has taught more. It is not merely the end points, but the movement between them that matters. By evening, the caravan reaches the outskirts of the city. The handlers negotiate passage and resting spots while camels kneel to drink and eat. You take a moment to breathe in the air, tasting the mingling scents of river, smoke, and earth, a complex perfume that reminds you of every landscape passed along the Silk Road. The city gates loom above, framed in fading light. Traders, travelers, and guards mingle in muted chatter. You realize that soon the road will resume, stretching farther, demanding patience, endurance, and presence once more. But for now, the twilight brings a pause, a quiet moment to reflect on the journey so far. You sit near a fire, camels resting nearby, and let your mind drift. The desert, the steppe, the mountains all echo softly, layered in memory. Each step, each mirage, each oasis, each shadowed path has left a subtle imprint. You sense the rhythm of the road beneath your feet, the stories carried by the wind, and the countless travelers who have walked this way long before you. Fareed hands you a cup of warm tea, its aroma sweet and grounding. To the road, he murmurs, voice low, almost reverent, and to those who remember it. You lift the cup, feeling a quiet connection to the journey, to your companions, and to the unseen voices of the Silk Road. The twilight deepens, folding the caravan into a soft cocoon of firelight, shadow, and star glow. You lean back against a camel, letting exhaustion and peace settle in equal measure. The night hums gently around you, the distant river, the quiet city, and the rhythm of the camel's breathing blending into a lullaby. You realize the caravan is not merely moving through space, it is moving through time, memory, and perception, each mile layering experience upon experience. Sleep comes slowly, gradually, as the last rays of twilight fade into night. The city hums softly in the distance, The desert whispers faintly in memory, and you are carried forward, ready for the journey ahead. Morning arrives like a quiet invitation, soft light spilling over the rooftops and walls of the city. You rise slowly, limbs stiff from the previous day's ride, the desert and flats behind you still lingering in memory. Zahir shifts under you, eager but patient, as if reminding you that the journey continues and comfort is always temporary. Farid is already awake, walking alongside the camels as the handlers prepare them for departure. "The city is a curious place," he murmurs, "full of noise, smells, and people, yet it hums with its own rhythm, one that travelers like us learn to respect." You glance at the bustling streets, the carts moving slowly along cobblestone paths, the traders shouting softly to advertise spices, silk, and pottery. Children weave between legs, laughing, and the scent of bread and roasting meat fills the air. The contrast to the harsh desert and open flats is striking. Here, life is dense, deliberate, and alive. The caravan moves carefully through the city gates, a small parade among the townsfolk. Camels kneel low to navigate narrow streets, their bells chiming softly. You pass markets where merchants display vibrant textiles and shiny ceramics, their colors dazzling after the muted tones of the desert. You notice a man carving intricate designs into a block of wood, a simple act, but one that speaks of patience and artistry. Farid leans close, whispering, "Historians still argue whether these cities were primarily trade hubs or cultural centers. The truth, of course, is both. The Silk Road doesn't distinguish, it simply connects." You nod, savoring the phrase, feeling the weight of countless travelers who have moved through these same streets. The noise, the smells, and the rhythm of life seem almost like a balm after the desert's harsh lessons. Yet you remain aware that the road extends beyond the city, endless and demanding. The caravan pauses in a shaded courtyard near a small inn, camels kneeling gratefully as they drink and nibble. The handlers distribute food, and you join them for a simple meal of flatbread, dried fruit, and cheese. The city hums around you, merchants bartering, children laughing, dogs barking. The contrast with the quiet, lonely flats and the whispering desert is almost dizzying. You notice small details that connect the city to the road, worn stone paths from centuries of traffic, inscriptions marking donations or prayers, and merchants who still rely on maps and memories rather than only written records. Farid points out a small statue, worn smooth from hands touching it over generations. A reminder, he says, that even here, the road has shaped lives and left traces. After the meal, the caravan sets out through the city again, this time moving toward the outskirts. The buildings thin, replaced gradually by open fields, then the soft rolling hills that signal the transition back to wilderness. You glance back at the city, feeling a mixture of relief, awe, and curiosity. Its lights, noise, and smells will linger in memory, a temporary pause on the endless march east. As you leave the last streets behind, the landscape begins to open, trees dotting the fields and distant hills rising softly against the sky. The rhythm of the caravan changes, slower, more deliberate. The camels adjust to the new terrain, and you feel the familiar mix of fatigue and anticipation that comes with each mile traveled. Farid rides beside you, pointing toward a small stream. "A gift from the city," he says, smiling. It reminds travelers that the road isn't just sand and stone. There are moments of relief, beauty, and life, if you know where to look. You kneel beside the stream, letting cool water run over your hands and face. Zahir drinks deeply, and you notice small fish darting beneath the surface. The simple act of water, movement, and life feels profound after so many days of harsh terrain. You sip slowly, tasting not just water, but a connection to all who have paused here before. As the sun rises higher, the caravan moves on through gentle hills, the horizon opening wide once more. The road ahead promises long stretches of travel, dunes and flats, but the memory of the city, its smells, sounds and colors, will linger, a soft counterpoint to the desert's stark lessons. You glance at Farid, and he nods, acknowledging the unspoken understanding. The Silk Road is both harsh and generous, relentless and patient. Every city, oasis, and desert crossing leaves its mark, shaping travelers' bodies, minds, and souls. The hills give way to wide plains, the air shimmering with heat, and the camels settle into a steady rhythm. The wind carries the faint scent of the city behind you, blending with the dust and grass of the plains ahead. You breathe deeply, letting the journey, the city, and the road itself sink into memory. As evening approaches, the plains stretch endlessly, dotted with rocks, shrubs, and occasional distant trees. You notice the camels' shadows stretching long across the ground, the fading light painting everything in gold and soft violet. The handlers move quietly, speaking in low tones, respecting the calm that descends on the caravan after a day of city bustle and gentle hills. Farid rides beside you once more. "Remember," he says, voice low, almost a whisper, "every city is a pause, every hill a marker, every desert a teacher. The road never forgets." You nod, the weight of his words sinking into the rhythm of your heartbeat. The caravan moves steadily, a chain of life winding across plains, heading toward mountains, mirages, and the unknown beyond. The city recedes behind, but its presence, the colors, sounds, and memories will remain as a gentle pulse under your skin, a quiet companion as the road stretches eastward. Night falls gradually, folding the caravan into a soft, quiet world of stars, wind, and distant hills. You lie back on the sand near Zahir, letting exhaustion, memory, and quiet anticipation settle over you. The camel's breathing, the handler's soft movements, and the whispering wind form a lullaby for the journey ahead, a gentle promise that the road continues, endless, patient, and alive. The morning light spills gently over the distant mountains, painting their jagged peaks in soft gold and rose hues. You stir, stretching stiff limbs, and feel the familiar ache of long days spent in the saddle. Zahir shifts beside you, shaking his head and flicking his ears, as if to remind you that the journey continues and that there is always more road ahead. Farid rides close, his eyes scanning the horizon. "The eastern foothills are near," he murmurs. "After this stretch, the terrain will change again. Rocks, streams, and winding paths. We must stay alert." You take a deep breath, savoring the cool air that smells faintly of pine and earth. The plains are dotted with shrubs and scattered stones, and the camel's hooves drum softly against the ground. The rhythm is steady, hypnotic, and comforting, a gentle pulse that carries you forward. As the caravan moves, the distant mountains grow sharper, their slopes carved by wind and rain. You notice patches of snow clinging to higher ridges, and streams glitter faintly as they descend toward the plains. The contrast to the endless flats and deserts you've traversed is striking. Here, the land feels alive, dynamic, and almost conversational, as if it speaks through the rustle of leaves and the trickle of water. Farid nudges you gently. "See that cluster of trees by the stream?" he says. "Travelers often stop there to rest, fill water skins, and let the animals drink. Some even leave small tokens, a coin, a carved stone, a knot in a branch. Historians still argue whether these were markers or simple gestures of gratitude." You dismount, walking alongside Zahir as he drinks from the clear, cold water. The liquid tastes of the mountains themselves, crisp, clean, and almost electric. You cup your hands, letting the water wash over your face, and feel a quiet exhilaration. It's a reminder that the journey is not just endurance, but also awareness, noticing small miracles along the way. The caravan settles briefly under the trees, the camels kneeling gratefully, their bells chiming softly. The handlers prepare a simple meal: flatbread, dried fruit, and fresh cheese. You share quiet conversation with Farid, reflecting on the road so far. The deserts, the flats, the oasis, the city, and the mirages that tested your mind. Each place has left its mark, and now the mountains promise new challenges and discoveries. By midday, the foothills rise more steeply, and the path narrows. Camels navigate carefully, hooves slipping occasionally on loose stones. You adjust your grip on Zahir's reins, feeling every shift in his balance, every subtle motion of the trail beneath you. The wind carries the scent of pine, wildflowers, and distant water, and you notice small birds flitting between trees, their songs faint but persistent. Farid rides beside you, pointing to a small cave partially hidden by boulders. "Travelers sometimes use it for shelter," he says. "Inside, you might find carvings, notes, or faint echoes of those who passed before. Some claim spirits linger there. Others say it's merely the mind's tendency to remember. Either way, it's a reminder that the road holds memory." You glance at the cave, but continue past, respecting the rhythm of the caravan. The foothills are quiet yet alive, each turn revealing a new perspective. A valley here, a stream there, rocks sculpted by centuries of wind. You feel a sense of awe, tempered by fatigue, and a profound gratitude for the steady companionship of the caravan. As afternoon fades into evening, the sun dips low behind the peaks, casting long shadows across the slopes. The light glows warm and soft, illuminating the camels' coats and the rough texture of the trail. You pause on a ridge, taking in the view. Valleys stretching into the distance, dotted with streams, trees, and small settlements. The road ahead winds upward, promising more challenges, but also more beauty. The handlers prepare to camp for the night, gathering firewood and tethering camels. The air cools rapidly, carrying the scent of pine and earth, and the sky darkens with stars, each one mirrored faintly in the streams below. You settle near the fire, letting your body relax while remaining alert to the subtle movements around you. Farid leans close, his voice soft against the whisper of the wind. "Remember what we've learned," he says. "The road is more than miles and markers. It is memory, endurance, awareness, and respect. Every step carries the stories of those before us." You nod, feeling the weight and warmth of his words settle into your mind. Around you, the caravan rests, camels kneeling, handlers murmuring quietly, and the mountains holding their silent, watchful presence. You close your eyes briefly, letting exhaustion and contentment wash over you. Night deepens, cool and still. The stars shine brightly, and the distant sound of water trickling from mountain streams blends with the soft breathing of camels. The wind whispers through pine needles, a lullaby for travelers weary from long days. You feel the journey in every fiber of your body and mind, the miles behind, the road ahead, and the quiet pulse of life that runs through every footstep, hoof, and heartbeat. The caravan sleeps under the stars, the fire casting a warm glow over the encampment. You lie back against a soft mound of earth, feeling the rhythm of the road beneath you. Every challenge, every oasis, every city and mirage has led you here, to this moment of quiet reflection. The eastern foothills rise above, strong and unwavering, but the road is no longer daunting. It is familiar, shaped by every step taken and every lesson learned. You let your thoughts drift, folding in the voices of past travelers, the whispers of the wind, and the gentle rhythm of the camels breathing. The road stretches onward, endless, patient, alive, and you are a part of it, carrying the stories, memories, and small triumphs of the Silk Road forward. As your eyes close, the wind hums softly, the mountains stand sentinel, and the stars gaze down like distant companions, guiding you into deep, peaceful sleep. The night wraps around you like a soft blanket, the stars above twinkling faintly in quiet rhythm. You feel the camels beneath you, steady and warm, and the handler's soft murmurs blend into a gentle hum. The foothills rise silently around you, their slopes fading into shadow, protective and timeless. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders drop, your muscles release, and your mind quiet. The road will continue tomorrow, but for now, rest is enough. The Silk Road carries stories, memories, and whispers of those who traveled before, and you too are a part of its long, winding history. Every step you've taken, every mirage glimpsed, every oasis found has shaped your journey, and it will remain with you, soft and steady, like a pulse beneath your skin. The wind hums through pine and stone, carrying faint scents of distant water, dry earth, and quiet smoke. It's a lullaby, gentle and persistent, guiding you toward deeper calm. Imagine the camels kneeling softly, the fire dwindling, and the caravan cocooned under the starry sky. Each detail folds into your mind like a gentle memory, a whisper of the vast and patient world around you. Let your thoughts float, unbound and light. The mountains, the plains, the desert, and the cities all fade into a soothing background of endless journeys, quiet lessons, and soft, unbroken rhythm. You are safe here, cradled by the road, the wind, and the night itself. Now, dim your thoughts, slow your breath, and sink fully into sleep. The road will wait, the stars will watch, and the wind will carry your story forward in gentle, timeless currents. Sweet dreams.